Hey, what's going on, guys? Enshrouded's Forging the Path update is here, and this one is not just another balance pass or a couple of bug fixes. It feels like a full-on rebuild of some of the game's biggest systems. The devs have been very clear that this update is a huge step forward, especially because it folds in the first version of adventure sharing, along with major combat changes, a reworked skill tree, deeper gear progression, and a long list of quality of life improvements that touch almost every part of the game. And honestly, the first thing people need to know is that this update changes the way existing characters work. If you load into an older save, your skill tree gets reset and all your skill points come back because the whole tree has been redesigned from the ground up. That sounds dramatic, but it makes sense when you look at what changed. There are more paths between classes, more skills overall, a zoomed out view for better planning, and even the double jump skill has been moved to the center so it is easier to reach no matter what kind of build you are running. On top of that, a lot of skills can now be upgraded instead of just unlocked once, which means your build is no longer just about what you pick, but how far you invest into it. The base versions are a bit weaker than before, but the fully upgraded versions are meant to feel just as strong or stronger than the old system ever did. The combat side of this update is probably the part most players are going to feel immediately. Regular attacks now help build a new resource called Focus, and once that meter is full, you can unleash a special weapon ability for a much bigger payoff. Heavy attacks were added across melee weapons too, and they are meant to hit harder, break stun faster, and give fights more timing and rhythm instead of making everything feel like the same button mash. The attack chains on two-handed axes, two-handed hammers, and greatswords were also reworked, so those weapons feel more in line with the fantasy of actually swinging a massive weapon. Even tools like pickaxes and wood-chopping axes got their own special power tied into the new system, which is a pretty wild upgrade for basic gathering. Gear progression also got hit with a major overhaul. Armors, shields, wards, rings, pickaxes, and wood-chopping axes can now be upgraded with runes, and existing equipment has been converted into the new, upgradable version when you load in. That means your favorite old set is not dead, but it does mean you should check everything you're wearing and make sure you are actually investing upgrades into the pieces that matter most. What makes this change even more interesting is that upgrades are handled by class-specific survivors now. The blacksmith handles warrior gear, the huntress handles ranger equipment, and the alchemist takes care of mage gear. The armor calculation itself has been tuned so better gear really matters more, and upgraded items can reach protection levels that are equal to or better than the older versions. Mage players also got some nice love here, especially early on. Wand range has been increased, wand durability is up, Fireball's early version hits a little more generously, and resin is easier to come by in early game loot, so spellcasting does not feel like such a slog at the start. That fits the broader early game pass too, because the opening areas were reworked to feel smoother, resources were redistributed to help new characters get moving faster, tutorials were improved, and the first few level ups were paced more carefully so progression feels less awkward right out of the gate. One of the coolest additions is adventure sharing, because this is the kind of feature that can really change how players interact with the game long term. You can upload your Embervale world, browse other player creations from inside the game, download worlds to visit, and even use a new camera item to take screenshots of your base before sharing it. There's also a way to define a spawn point for visitors to the Flame Altar, which makes shared worlds feel more like actual destinations instead of just files people pass around. The devs have also said this is only the beginning, with future plans for logic systems, interactive elements, puzzles, enemy spawning, and traps, which sounds like they want this feature to grow into something much bigger than a simple world browser. Building and inventory life also gets a lot more comfortable in this patch. The new Quick Stack station lets you dump stackable materials into nearby magic chests automatically, which is one of those changes that sounds modest until you realize how much time it saves. Building directly from magic chests is easier now too. The material catalog gives you a cleaner way to browse what you own, and you can even sample a block or terrain material by pointing at it and selecting it directly. On top of that, the crafting side got cleanup across recipes, stations, and factory menus, with more useful hints for where resources come from and better organization for all the long lists that had started to get messy over time. The water system is another huge talking point because it now behaves in a much more persistent way and can travel farther across flat surfaces, canals, and larger builds. That makes water setups way more consistent, but it also means old builds with multiple dispensers or complicated channels may suddenly behave differently after the update, including flooding in places that were previously safe. Water barriers, drains, waterfalls, and loading behavior all got attention too, so the whole system feels more like a real simulation now, instead of something held together by shortcuts. If your base uses water as decoration or machinery, this is definitely the part to pay attention to first. So overall, this update feels like a reset in the best possible way. It is pushing combat toward more meaningful choices, pushing gear toward real upgrade paths, giving builders and sharers better tools, and making early progression feel less clunky. For a game already built around exploration, survival, and creative building, that combination is a pretty big deal.